Hello again and welcome. In the past few videos, we've been looking at lists, tuples, and dictionaries, ways of kind of taking data in Python and making it relatable to other data, either in the collection of it in a single item, such as a tuple, which is immutable, or a list, which is mutable, or by making it directly relatable in a dictionary with a key and a value. In this video, we start getting away from how we store, call, and manipulate data in Python, and we start getting it more into the nitty-gritty of actually programming in Python. And in this video, we're going to start doing that with what's known as branching or working with conditionals in Python. In other programming languages, this is if-then statements. In Python, we use three different ways of doing this. We have if, elif, and else. And I'm going to really spend a lot of time in this video just kind of going through and explaining the differences of these and how to structure an if-then statement in Python correctly. And the reason why I'm putting this so early in this lecture series, even though it's kind of complex, is because the backbone of programming, it really is if-then statements. There's a great video of Bill Gates talking about the way in which he views the world. And the way in which he views the world is through a lens of computer programming. And what he says is that the whole world, every decision, everything that happens, really comes down to an if-then statement. Now, this might happen billions of times in a split second, but it really still comes down to a simple if-then statement. If X, then do Y. If Z, then do W. That's kind of really the backbone of any program. If something is this, then I want it to do this other thing. And that's why I'm putting this so early on in this lecture series. If-then statements are very important to become comfortable with, and they're very important for you to just kind of start thinking about and start thinking the way in which you do things in everyday life even as being nothing more than a series of if-then statements. So in Python, the way in which we structure an if-then statement is quite simple. If x, let's just create a variable, is equal to 0, then, and notice I have a colon, that's kind of functioning as our then print x is equal to 0. And right now we're going to create this object or variable. X is going to be equal to 0 up here. And if we run this, it'll print off, in fact, x is equal to 0, what we wanted to see printed off. If x is equal to 1, however, nothing happens. So we have if x is equal to 1, then, with our colon, print this. We've indented this, and that's important to note. We've indented it because this needs to be contained within our conditional statement, this print command. Now, this is a fairly simple conditional. What if, however, we don't want to just say merely if x equals 0, do this. We want to say also elif, this is how you write also if in Python, elif x is equal to, x is equal to 0, print, print, let's just have it print this again. And now once again, it prints it off because we have said, if x is equal to 1, then do this. And because it's not, we go down to this next line of code, which says, or if x equals 0, then print off this. Now, a great way to kind of escape this is we can just say also else, use the command else. So what this is going to do is it's going to say if x is equal to 1, then print off this, x is 0. If x is equal to 0, then print off this. We're going to set x equal to 2 right now. And then else, print off x is not equal to 0. So what this is going to do is it's going to go through and it's going to say if x equals 0, which it's not, then it print off x is equal to 0. If it's not, else, print off x is not equal to 0. And if we look down here on the output, it's done just that. It's told us that x is not equal to 0. We can do more complex things. We can say, instead, x is equal and we're going to add in here a string of what x is. And what this is going to do is it's going to tell us what x is actually equal to. And what do you know? Look down here and we see just that. That's kind of the way, at their basic level, how conditional statements work. Now, you're never in your time coding, probably for a DH project, going to really structure an if-then statement in these ways. Instead, the way in which you're oftentimes going to have to use if-then statements is when you're working with your data, which is oftentimes going to be stored in something like a list or a tuple or a dictionary. And let's start kind of looking at how if-then statements, conditional statements in Python, are useful. So what we want to do is we want to get a variable. X is going to be equal to the length of list 1. Remember, the way in which you make a length of a list is by using this len and then parentheses put the thing that you want the length of. So now when we print off x, as we're going to see that x is equal to 4. Fantastic. So I'm going to save that. We're going to come back to that. So what I want to do is I want to iterate across this list. So what I want to do is I want to say for name and list 1. I want it to, give me 1 second. You'll see why I'm doing this in just a second. I is equal to 0. So for name and list 1, here's my conditional. If name equals, let's say, Bob, then we got the colon. I wanted to print off Bob is found in the list, and he is at position number. We're going to do a string. I'm not doing the F commands here just for simplicity's sake. And he was found at position I. That's going to tell us where. And then we're going to say in a list size of, add a space there. And we're going to do the string of x. And that's going to be how we do this. Let's leave that for right now. So I'm going to print that off. And what we're going to do is we're going to be iterating through this. So I want to do I equals I plus 1. And again, I'm going to explain this in a lot more detail why I'm doing these I plus 1 in the next video when we speak about loops. For right now, I'm trying to just demonstrate the conditional that's in the loop. Oh, and we see what I did wrong there real easily. There we go. And now if we go through, we see that it's told us that Bob is found in the list, and he is at position number 2. Remember, in Python, it's 0, 1, 2. So this is correct. In a list the size of 4. So there are 4 items in the list, and he's at position number 2 right there. If that confuses you, you can do something simple and just do I plus 1, and then you can print it off, and it'll tell you that he's at position number 3. But I encourage you not to do this because you really need to start thinking about Python in a zero-based system with 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 being the position in the list. I recommend just getting used to that and not doing little cheats like this to make yourself happier. So anyways, this kind of goes through and tells us that. What, however, would happen if we look for somebody not named Bob? Let's just say Mufasa. That sounds fun. Mufasa. Nothing happens. If I'm looking at this from a kind of a debugging point of view, I don't really know if what's happened is that I've made a mistake or what. So this is where this really nice else command comes in. So else Mufasa is not in the list. Please verify the name and spelling. So now, when we do this, it's going to go through and it's going to print off all of these iterations. And for right now, that's perfectly fine. There's a reason why I've done it that way. And I'm going to talk about that in the for loop, how to escape out of things. But for right now, you can see that it's going through each of these things and it's saying if Mufasa is found there in the first iteration, then print off this. If not, print off that. And you can kind of get a sense for how you can iterate through lists conditionally. So you can use the Elif statement also. Elif equals Tom. That's Simba one. Simba. Stick with the Lion King here. Elif, name equals Simba, and I forgot my colon. Then do that. And we see that once again, we're back to seeing nothing. And the reason is because I've said if it equals that, then do this, or if it equals that, then do this. We haven't really escaped anything. So that's kind of the utility of actually going through and using conditional statements when you're kind of iterating across a list. This is kind of the basis of any program that you're going to write. Is it's going to be an if-then statement. If something occurs, then you want a very explicit result to happen. So if a list has something, you want to trigger the program to do a very specific function. As we go through and we speak about conditionals in our actual code that we're going to be designing later on, you're going to see why viewing the world and viewing programming through a lens of conditional statements is so vital. In the meantime, while you kind of have a basis now of what a conditional statement is and how to form it, I encourage you to play with this a little bit. Conditional statements are one of those things in programming where the best way to really get a sense of it is to just use it. You're not going to break your computer, make mistakes, figure out why errors are occurring, and just troubleshoot them on the fly. You're going to find that if you make 5 or 6 mistakes in creating conditional statements, you're not going to repeat those 5 or 6 mistakes again. Or if you do, you're going to be able to identify why you made them much more quickly. Kind of the way I did here when I forgot to include name in the elif statement. I encourage you to just experiment with conditional statements. So remember, there's essentially just a couple different ones. There's an if condition is going to happen, then you're going to pass. And I'm going to talk about passes and breaks and all those things in a later video. There's also elif, and then there's also else. Get used to each of these and become very familiar with them. And the best way to think about that when you're kind of creating your code for elif statements is to describe it kind of in normal everyday English. If the name is equal to Bob, then do this. And that's how you should kind of structure it. If this, read that out loud to yourself, read the colon as then, and read this indentation as then do this. Once we start getting comfortable with conditional statements, in later videos, we're going to start kind of using them in much more complex ways. For right now, though, just get this very basic understanding down, and you should be fine moving forward. Thank you for listening.